I've spent over 8 years as a park ranger at one of America's deepest, most isolated lakes. There's a rule we don't tell the public, a rule that isn't printed in any guidebook or posted on any sign. It's passed down in whispers from one ranger to the next, usually on your third day, right as the sun is setting. The rule is simple. Never look directly at the lake after dark, not with your naked eyes, not under any circumstances. For 8 years, I followed this rule, believing it to be an overblown safety precaution, a piece of spooky folklore to keep new recruits on their toes. I was wrong. What I've witnessed, the disappearances that never get reported, the patterns the Park Service refuses to acknowledge, the thing that waits beneath that perfect blue surface, has compelled me to break my silence. This isn't a campfire story. This is a warning. My name is Leo Vance, and this is what really happens at Crater Lake. My name is Leo Vance. For nearly a decade, I've worn the uniform at Crater Lake National Park. The official reports I file, the visitor logs I keep, the incident documents, they never tell the real story. They're sanitized, stripped of context, designed to fit into tidy boxes for administrators who've never spent a night on the rim. What I'm about to share with you is the truth that exists outside those files. The truth that has weight and cold and a silence so deep it feels like a physical presence. This lake isn't like other lakes. It fills the caldera of Mount Mazama, a volcano that tore itself apart over 7,000 years ago. The lake is over 1,900 feet deep. No rivers flow in or out. Its water comes only from rain and snowfall, a closed system. It takes more than 2 centuries for a single molecule of water to complete its journey through evaporation and precipitation. The water you see on the surface today fell as snow when the United States was just an idea. That fact alone should give you pause. We are looking into a different time. Then there's the color. It's a blue that doesn't exist anywhere else on Earth. A blue so pure it feels like a mistake. Cameras cannot capture it. Tourist photos look artificially enhanced. Professional photographers with their calibrated filters and polarizers try to compensate, and their images still fall short. The water acts as a filter, absorbing the red and yellow wavelengths of light almost completely. What reflects back is a relentless, consuming blue. People drive for days just to stand and look at it. We tell them the color comes from the incredible depth and the purity of the water. We never, ever mention the rest. I started this job 8 years ago, in early May. My training officer was a woman named Mara Shaw. She had been a ranger at Crater Lake for 22 years. She walked with subtle limp from a decades-old hiking accident, wore her steel gray hair in a single practical braid, and I never once saw her smile at a tourist. Not a genuine one. Her face was a mask of professional neutrality. I didn't see that mask crack during my entire first season. On my third day, she took me up to the rim just as the sun was beginning to dip below the western wall. I was still green, full of ideas about checking camping permits and giving talks on local geology. I thought the job was about stewardship and education. "Watch the water," she said, her voice flat. I did. The sunset painted the crater walls in gold and orange, a breathtaking display. But the lake didn't change. It deepened from a radiant blue to a profound dark indigo, but that impossible color held. It seemed to reject the sunset's fire. "Now look away," Mara said. I looked at her instead. Her eyes were fixed on my face, not the vista. "After the sun sets," she stated, each word deliberate, "you do not look at the lake directly, not with your bare eyes. If you have a duty that requires observing the lake's surface after dark, you use a barrier, binoculars, the viewfinder of a camera. You never, under any circumstances, make direct eye contact with the water itself." I remember a laugh bubbling up in my throat, which I quickly stifled. "Eye contact? With a lake?" With what's in the lake, she said, turning abruptly and walking back toward our patrol vehicle. Over her shoulder, she added, "You'll think I'm insane for about 6 weeks. Then something will happen, and you'll understand. Until then, follow the rule." That was it. No explanation. No context. For the next month and a half, I operated under the assumption that this was an elaborate hazing ritual, a strange personal superstition Mara had developed, or perhaps, and this seemed unkind but possible, an early sign of something age-related. She was in her late 50s. It was a thought that shamed me but persisted. Then, in late June, I was assigned to shadow Silas Reed. Silas had been at Crater Lake longer than anyone, 31 years. He was a man carved from the same volcanic rock as the park, weathered and silent. He could hike a 15-mile trail and speak maybe 20 words. I was to learn the maintenance routines on the remote northern trails from him. We hiked for 3 hours without speaking. He checked trail markers, cleared fallen branches, made notes on a weathered clipboard. It was meditative, mundane work. We stopped for lunch at a cliffside viewpoint overlooking the lake. The silence felt comfortable enough that I made my mistake. I asked him about Mara's rule. Silas didn't respond immediately. He finished his sandwich with methodical slowness, took a long drink from his thermos, screwed the cap back on, and placed it carefully beside him. Then he spoke, his eyes never leaving the water. "You ever notice this lake has no native fish?" "It has fish," I corrected, eager to show I'd done my reading. "Rainbow trout and kokanee salmon." Inhabitants, they wouldn't come here. They call it a sacred place, but not in the way we think of sacred. It was forbidden. They had stories about a great battle between the spirit of the sky and the spirit of the world below. The sky spirit won, they said, but the thing from below didn't die. It retreated, down into this hole. "That's mythology," I said, feeling on firmer ground. "A way to explain a geological wonder. Maybe." He began gathering his trash, his movements precise. "But I've worked here 31 years. I've seen 44 people go into that water who shouldn't have. Not swimmers, not accidents. People who stood at the rim and looked at the lake too long after the sun went down. Then they walked down to the shore. They stepped in, and they kept walking. Straight out, straight down, until the water closed over their heads. Suicides, the reports say, but there are never any bodies." He stood up, brushing dust from his pants. "Recovery divers go down. Search and rescue teams scan with sonar. Nothing. The lake is too deep, too cold, too dark below a few hundred feet. But that's not the strange part." He started walking again, and I hurried to follow. "The strange part is what happens before they walk in. They stand at the rim, just looking. They don't seem upset. They seem calm, peaceful even. Then they walk, at a normal pace, to the boat dock or trail access. They don't run. They wade in like they're going for a leisurely swim, except they don't swim. They walk. The water is maybe 40 degrees Fahrenheit. You or I would gasp. Our bodies would seize up. We'd fight to get back to shore. They don't. They just keep walking until they're gone." We hiked for another full mile before he spoke again. 3 of them were rangers, he said, his voice low. 2 were on the maintenance crew. One was a university biologist who was studying the lake's chemistry. All of them had spent time on the water after dark, observing, taking notes, doing their jobs. He stopped at a trail junction and pulled out a map, though I was certain he had every route and rock memorized. Mara's rule isn't superstition. It's pattern recognition. People who look directly at the lake after sunset start to change. Small things at first. They zone out in the middle of conversations. They lose track of time. They get turned around on trails they've hiked 100 times. Then, one night, they're found at the rim, staring. And then they walk in. Why doesn't the park just close after dark? I asked, the logical solution seeming obvious. Because nothing happens during the day, he said, folding the map. Because 99% of visitors leave perfectly fine. And because officially acknowledging the problem would mean having to explain why it exists. The Park Service doesn't have a protocol for that. He reached into the breast pocket of his jacket and pulled out a small laminated card. The plastic was yellowed and cracked at the edges. Printed in simple block letters was a header, Asterisk Crater Lake Evening Patrol Guidelines. Internal use only, asterisk. The bullet points were stark. Do not observe the lake's surface directly after sunset. Use optical equipment, binoculars, cameras, for necessary observation. Limit rim patrols to 30-minute intervals after dark. Report any visitor observed staring at the lake for more than 5 consecutive minutes. Do not approach individuals standing alone at the rim after 2200 hours. Contact supervisor before initiating contact. If you experience disorientation, time distortion, or visual disturbances, report immediately and rotate off evening duty. Every ranger gets one of these, Silas said, handing it to me. Usually in your first month. Mara probably waited to see if you'd last. Most people quit before their first season is over because of the rule, because of what happens when you don't follow it. That was the end of our discussion. We finished the patrol. I thanked him. He gave a single, silent nod. I kept the card. I still have it. The edges are more worn now, and I've added notes in the margins over the years. For the rest of that first summer, I followed the rule without believing in it. The lake was just a lake. Deep, cold, uniquely blue, but just water. The rule was a safety guideline wrapped in a ghost story to make it memorable. Don't stare into the abyss because you might get vertigo and fall. It made perfect rational sense. Then August arrived, and with it, the first crack in my rational world. A visitor went missing. His name was Douglas Vann, 52 years old, from Sacramento. He had checked into the historic lodge on a Wednesday afternoon, alone. He told the front desk clerk he was there to photograph the lake at sunrise. He had professional-grade camera equipment, a detailed itinerary, and presented as perfectly competent. On Thursday morning, his car was still in the lodge parking lot. His room key hadn't been used. The bed was made. His camera bag, untouched, sat on the passenger seat of his locked car. A search was initiated. We found him at the Watchman Overlook on the western rim at 6:47 a.m. He was sitting on a low stone wall, facing the water, perfectly still. His eyes were open, unblinking. When I called his name, there was no response, no flicker of recognition. I moved closer, my boots crunching on the gravel. I touched his shoulder. He was cold, not the cold of death, but the deep, penetrating cold of someone who had been sitting motionless in near-freezing temperatures for many hours. Mr. Vann? Douglas? Can you hear me? His eyes moved. Slowly, mechanically, they tracked from the lake's surface to my face. He looked at me as if I were a distant object, something on the far shore he was trying to identify. His voice, when it came, was a dry rasp and used. It showed me. I knelt beside him. What showed you? What did you see? Under the blue, he whispered, his gaze drifting back toward the water. Everything that's down there. I called for medical assistance immediately. They arrived with blankets and chemical heat packs. As his core temperature rose, Douglas Vann gradually returned to himself. He was confused, disoriented. Why was he so cold? Why was he at the Overlook? Why was it morning? He remembered checking into the lodge. He remembered his plan to photograph the sunrise. He had no memory of anything after sunset the previous evening. The medical team transported him to the clinic in the nearby town. The official incident report listed exposure and possible sleepwalking episode. Mara filed it under standard visitor medical incidents, but she added a digital note to his record that only rangers could see. Subject may have observed lake after dark. Monitor for return visits. I asked her about that note later, in the relative privacy of the patrol cabin. What does that mean, monitor for return visits? She didn't look up from her paperwork. Some of them come back, she said. Not right away. Months later. Sometimes years. They show up again, always alone, always with the same story. Photography, hiking, a spiritual retreat. They never make it past the first night. We find them at the rim, staring. Or we find their car and their wallet and their keys, but not them, or we don't find anything at all. A chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air went through me. What do they see, Mara? When they look. She put her pen down and finally looked at me. It was a measuring look, the same one Silas had given me at the trail junction. She was assessing my stability, my readiness for an answer. I don't know, she said, and the honesty in her voice was more frightening than any tale she could have concocted. I've never looked. September brought the rule's first direct test for me personally. I was on evening rim patrol, a quiet Tuesday with light tourist traffic. My job was to ensure all visitors were headed down before the main road closed for the night. At 8:15 p.m., 45 minutes after sunset, I found a woman at the Discovery Point overlook. She was standing at the safety railing, motionless, staring out at the vast darkness where the lake should be. I could see the faint plume of her breath in the cold air, regular and steady. She was grossly underdressed, jeans, a light windbreaker, no hat or gloves. She should have been shivering violently, but she wasn't. I parked my truck a short distance back and approached on foot, keeping my flashlight beam pointed at the ground. Evening, ma'am. I called out. The park roads are closing soon. Time to head back to your vehicle. No response. I moved closer. She was perhaps 30, with dark hair pulled into a ponytail. Her hands gripped the railing. Her eyes were wide open and fixed on the blackness below. Ma'am, the rim road closes at 9. You need to leave now. Nothing. I was within 10 feet of her now, close enough to see that her pupils were dilated massively, far too wide for someone under a bright three-quarter moon, close enough to see she wasn't blinking. A deep unease settled in my gut. Ma'am, I need you to come with me right now. In a moment of catastrophic curiosity, I made the mistake of following her line of sight, just for a second, just to see what held her so completely. The lake was not dark blue. It was black, an absolute lightless black. No wind ripples, no reflection of moon or stars. It looked less like water and more like a hole, a void where the bottom of the caldera had fallen away into nothing. And something moved across that blackness, not on the surface, but beneath it, something pale and large, transiting from the direction of the phantom shiprock formation toward the western rim. It moved with a slow, deliberate purpose, like something swimming at great depth, but its size and the clarity of its movement were all wrong. It was too deep to be seen so clearly, and too large to be anything that belonged in this lake, or in any lake. I wrenched my gaze away. My hands were trembling. The woman was now looking at me, not at my eyes, but through me, as if I were a pane of smudged glass. It's beautiful, isn't it? She said. Her voice was soft, dreamy. I need you to come with me right now. I repeated, my own voice tight. I just need to see it one more time. She began to turn back to the water. I didn't ask again. I stepped forward, grabbed her arm above the elbow, and physically pulled her away from the railing. She resisted, not with panic or violence, but with a steady, rooted pressure, as if she were a tree and I was trying to uproot her. Ma'am, you're experiencing altitude sickness and disorientation. I'm taking you to medical. I kept pulling, and she finally relented, allowing me to guide her, stumbling to my passenger seat. She sat silently, staring straight ahead, as I drove to the ranger station. Mara was there, doing late paperwork. She took one look at the woman's placid, distant face, then at my own, which must have been pale. "You didn't look, did you?" she asked quietly. "Just for a second." "Go home," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Take tomorrow off. If you have any dreams about the lake tonight, write down every detail and bring them to me. Don't analyze them. Just write." I transferred the woman, who gave her name as Elise Petrov, to the on-call medical team. She was from Portland on a long weekend retreat. She had no memory of walking to Discovery Point. The last thing she clearly remembered was eating dinner in the lodge restaurant around 7 p.m. She was treated for mild hypothermia, spent the night under observation, and drove back to Portland the next morning, embarrassed and apologetic. I took the next day off. I didn't dream of the lake. I told myself that was a good sign. 6 weeks later, Elise Petrov's credit card was used at a gas station in Chiloquin, a town 20 miles north of the park. Her car was found 3 days after that, parked neatly in the Mazama Village lot near the south entrance. She wasn't in it. We mounted a full-scale search. Dog teams, helicopters, ground crews combing every trail within a 10-mile radius. No sign of her. No discarded clothing, no broken branches, no footprints leading into the wilderness. On the 6th day of the search, a seasonal maintenance worker found a set of boot prints at the boat launch. Size 7 women's. The prints led from the asphalt parking area across the coarse sand to the water's very edge. They did not lead back. The official report listed her as a missing person, presumed drowned. Her family hired a private recovery firm with side-scan sonar. They mapped the lake floor for 2 weeks. They found nothing. Mara added Elise Petrov's name to the handwritten list she kept in her desk drawer. I saw it once by accident when I was looking for a trail map. It was a simple column of names and dates, going back to 1988. 41 names at that time, all listed the same way. Missing, presumed drowned, last seen at the rim after dark. I asked her about it later. Why keep an unofficial list? If the Park Service won't acknowledge it, what's the point? She closed the drawer slowly. Because someone needs to remember them, she said, her voice low. The service can't acknowledge the pattern without acknowledging the cause. So it falls to us to keep track, to notice if it's happening more frequently, to see if something is changing. Is it? I asked. Changing. She was silent for a long time. Every year, a few more names. Every year, the incidents seemed to cluster a little closer together. And every year, I have to train new rangers because the old ones either quit or she stopped. Or what? Or they look too long, she said, finally meeting my eyes. And then they don't quit. They just disappear. That was October. I spent the winter months assigned to South Entrance Station, processing paperwork, safely away from the lake. I told myself the previous season had been a statistical anomaly, a run of bad luck. But in the quiet of the snowbound months, I couldn't forget the feeling of that woman's arm in my grip, the rooted resistance. I couldn't unsee that pale, purposeful movement under the black mirror of the lake. In March, before the spring thaw fully opened the park, I snowshoed up to the rim alone. Officially, I was surveying winter storm damage to the overlooked structures. Unofficially, I needed to see the lake in the safe, sterile light of day. The lake was breathtaking. Its edges laced with ice, the center a disk of that relentless, reassuring blue. I did my work, took my notes, and as I turned to leave, I saw it. Fresh vandalism carved deep into the wooden railing at Rim Village. The exposed was pale, not yet weathered. 3 words: don't look down. I filed my damage report. I mentioned the vandalism. I did not mention how my hands shook the entire hike back to the truck, or how the silence of the snow seemed to watch me. The summer season began with normalcy. Overflowing trash cans, tourists veering off marked trails, the constant drone of drones we had to intercept, the standard, grounding fare of park rangering. I started to believe the previous year had been a fluke, a bad season. Then June arrived, and with it, Dr. Eris Thorne. Dr. Thorne was a geologist, 47 years old, affiliated with university. He was at the park to collect water samples for a long-term study on lake chemistry and geothermal activity. He had all the proper permits, filed in triplicate. He'd been coming to Crater Lake every summer for 6 years. Mara knew him. He's careful, she told me when she assigned me to assist him. Follows protocols to the letter. Doesn't take risks. You'll learn a lot. We met at the boat launch on a clear Tuesday morning. Thorne's equipment was impressive. Spectrometers, sterile sample containers, high-precision depth gauges. As we loaded the park's research boat, he explained his work. The lake is a remarkably sensitive natural instrument, he said, his voice carrying the easy confidence of an academic. It's at the top of dormant, but still active, volcanic system. There's a magma chamber miles below us. My team is tracking minute changes in dissolved minerals and temperature gradients. Signals from the geology beneath. Is that dangerous? I asked, maneuvering the boat away from the dock. Not in our lifetime, he said with a dismissive wave, but it's vital to monitor. The lake records everything happening down there. He lowered a multi-sensor array over the side. It's like taking the volcano's pulse. We spent 4 hours collecting samples from a grid of coordinates. Thorne worked with meticulous, unhurried precision, labeling each vial, recording GPS data, double-checking his readings. He was the picture of professional rigor, exactly as Mara had described. At our final sampling point, near the base of the Phantom ship, his digital depth gauge suddenly flickered and displayed a negative reading. "That's odd," he muttered, tapping the screen. "It's reading a negative depth, as if the lake bottom is above us." "That's impossible," I said. "Must be a localized magnetic anomaly," he concluded. "The volcanic basalt can play havoc with electronics." He switched to a backup, a mechanical gauge. It told the same impossible story. Shrugging, he decided to lower the sampling canister manually, counting the meter marks on the cable as it descended. At 200 meters, the cable went slack, not the taut slack of hitting bottom, but a loose, weightless slack, as if the canister had simply stopped encountering resistance. Thorne frowned. "That can't be right. We're over the deepest section. This should be close to 600 meters down." He began hauling the cable back in. When the sampler broke the surface, the large collection bottle inside was full, but the water within was raw and it wasn't blue. It wasn't even clear. It was dark, not the dark of sediment or algae, but a purer, absorptive darkness, like ink. It had a strange viscosity, clinging to the glass of the container in a way water shouldn't. Thorne and I stared at it. The cheerful morning sunlight seemed to dim around us. "That is not lake water," he said finally, his academic cool faltering for a beat. "What is it?" "I don't know." He sealed the container's lid with unusual force, checking the latch twice. "I need to get this to the lab immediately." Gee, did we return to the boat launch in a silence heavier than our outgoing trip. As we unloaded, Thorne asked me a question that set every alarm bell in my head ringing. "Ranger Vance, does the park have any specific restrictions on nighttime observational research?" "The rim road closes at sunset," I said carefully. "Why do you ask?" I'd like to return tonight, take some readings. The thermal and chemical profiles can shift dramatically after dark. It's standard limnological practice. Night sampling on this lake isn't standard. I said, my voice tighter than I intended. It requires special dispensation, and even then it's strongly discouraged. He gave me a look I recognized, the same look I'd given Mara in my first week. Patronizing tolerance for an overcautious bureaucrat. I appreciate your concern, but I'm quite experienced. I've done night work on other volcanic lakes. I'll submit the after-hours request. It shouldn't be a problem. I reported the conversation and described the black sample to Mara the moment I was back at the station. She listened, her face impassive. When I finished, she asked, "The dark water, did it behave like water or like something else?" Like something else. I admitted it looked wrong. She opened her desk drawer, the one with the list, but didn't pull it out. She just looked inside for a moment, then closed it. Call his university, his department chair. Today, I made the call. The chair of the geology department was perplexed. Dr. Eris Thorne hadn't been affiliated with the university for 3 years. He'd left after an internal dispute over grant money and research methodology. He'd been publishing independently in minor journals, funding his own field work ever since. He still has valid permits with you, the chair said, but whatever he's doing, it's his own project. It's personal. I relayed this to Mara. She was already spreading Thorne's last 6 years of permit applications across her desk. Look at the pattern, she said, her finger tracing dates and coordinates. 6 summers. Each year, his sampling points get closer to the very center of the lake, the deepest point. Each year, his research objectives shift. Less about general chemistry, more about anomalous particulate matter and deep water acoustic signatures. And every single year, he's requested after dark access. She tapped this year's form. Every year was denied. Until now, a new administrator in the regional office approved it. They didn't know to say no. We need to revoke it, I said. We can't, she replied flatly. Not without concrete cause. And strange water isn't in the regulations. He could appeal and win, but we can supervise. You're assigned to his nighttime research. If he goes out on that lake after dark, you're with him. Your job is to keep him on the boat, keep him from the rim, and make sure he doesn't look at the water any longer than absolutely necessary. Thorne returned that evening at 8 p.m., 2 hours after sunset. He brought more equipment, powerful LED lights, a thermal camera, and a submersible drone. The air temperature had plummeted. Our breath fogged in the beams of our headlamps as we loaded the boat. "I appreciate you coming out, Ranger," he said, but his attention was already on the black expanse beyond the dock lights. We motored out to the same coordinates from the morning. The lake was a plate of obsidian, perfectly still, absorbing the moonlight rather than reflecting it. The only sounds are the putter of our outboard and the water slapping against the hull. Thorne set up his gear with a tense, hurried efficiency, unlike his methodical daytime pace. He redropped the depth gauge. It again read negative. He nodded, as if confirming a hypothesis, and scribbled in a waterproof notebook. He didn't seem surprised. He deployed the submersible drone, its camera feed appearing on a ruggedized monitor. The cable played out 50 feet, 100, 150. At 200 feet, it stopped descending. Thorne checked the readings. It's at depth, transmitting. The screen showed nothing. Not murk, not darkness. A true void, a null signal. Then something moved across the screen. It was pale and vast. A shape that hinted at structure, long, jointed limbs, but arranged in geometry that was profoundly alien. It moved past the camera slowly, and I could see a texture that was smooth in patches and ridged in others, like no skin or scale I could name. What is that? I breathed. Thorne leaned closer, his face illuminated by the monitor's glow. His pupils were wide. I don't know, he whispered, not with fear, but with a hungry awe. I've seen hints. Thermal ghosts. Unexplained currents. But this is the first visual confirmation. The shape and the depths turned. It didn't have eyes, not as we understand them, but a region of its form oriented toward the camera, and a sense of regard, of recognition, washed over me. The monitor screen filled with static, then went black. The cable went slack. Thorne hauled it in. The drone was gone. The cable end was sheared off. The metal and polymers fused into a smooth, glassy bead, as if by instantaneous, intense heat. A geothermal vent. Thorne said quickly, too quickly. Must have drifted over a fissure. That wasn't heat damage. I said, that was something else. What else could it be? He challenged, but he was staring at the water again, not at me. I started the motor. We're going back. Now. Just a few more readings. Now, Dr. Thorne. That's an order. He didn't argue, but he kept looking over the side, his gaze fixed on the black surface. I watched him carefully, ensuring he didn't lean too far. Halfway back to the launch, he spoke, his voice quiet and distant. It's not a geological formation, he said. What's down there? It's not volcanic activity. Then what is it? Something alive. Something that was here before the mountain collapsed. Maybe before the mountain existed. He was still staring at the water. The Klamath stories, I thought they were primitive attempts to explain hydrothermal features. But they weren't primitive. They were precise. They were warnings. Eris, I said, using his first name to break his fixation. Look at me. He turned. In the moonlight, I saw his eyes. His pupils were so dilated the irises had nearly vanished, leaving only black pools. You need medical attention. When we get to shore, I'm taking you to the clinic. I'm fine, he said, but he wasn't. He'd been exposed. To what? There was no medical term. At the dock, I told him his research permit was suspended pending a review of the equipment failure. He protested, citing his official approval. I stood my ground. He loaded his truck and drove away, his movement stiff, automatic. I radioed Mara immediately. He looked directly for minutes. His eyes are wrong. Static hissed for a moment, then her voice, strained but controlled. Is he still in the park? He just left, heading north. I'll alert the gates. We'll flag his plate. If he tries to return, we'll know. A pause. Owen, what's happening to him? The same thing that happens to all of them, she said, and the weariness in her voice was a tangible thing. He saw something in the water. Something his brain can't process within a normal framework. Now, part of his consciousness is still out there, still looking, even when he's physically away. It's like a retinal burn, but on the mind, and his psyche is trying to reconcile it with reality, and it's failing. Can it be treated? I don't know. No one who has progressed that far has ever voluntarily submitted to a full psychiatric workup. They either leave and we never see them again, or they come back, and they walk into the water. She took a shaky breath over the radio. Watch for him. He'll be back. Maybe not tonight. Maybe not this week. But he will come back. Dr. Eris Thorne returned 48 hours later. A ranger at the north entrance gate spotted his truck entering the park at 4:17 a.m. By the time the alert reached us and we converged on the rim, he was already at Discovery Point. He stood at the railing, facing the pre-dawn lake, a silhouette against the deep gray light. I approached with my flashlight pointed down, my own eyes carefully averted from the water. Eris, you need to come with me. Now. It's different now, he said, his voice a dry monotone. I can see it even when the sun is up. Even when I close my eyes, it's always there, just beneath the surface, waiting. Come with me, please. We can get you help. I just need to understand what it is. Then I can leave. I just need to understand. Before I could react, he hoisted himself over the safety railing. I lunged, my fingers closing on the fabric of his jacket. He twisted with surprising strength, the material tearing with a sharp rip, and then he was falling. He tumbled down the steep, unstable slope below the overlook. 50 feet of loose volcanic scree and stunted, clinging trees. I called for rescue on my radio and scrambled down after him. I found him wedged between two boulders at the bottom. His left leg was bent at a sickening angle. A gash on his forehead seeped blood into his hairline. But he was conscious, and his eyes were locked on the lake, now just 15 feet away. I can see it, he whispered as I reached him. Right there, just below the surface. Can you see it? I didn't look. I kept my eyes on his injuries, on his face, on anything but the water. It's beautiful, he breathed. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. The rescue team arrived. We stabilized his leg, stemmed the bleeding, and strapped him into a litter. It took 4 of us to haul him back up the treacherous slope. He didn't struggle. He just kept straining to look back at the lake until the ambulance doors closed. The hospital in Klamath Falls admitted him for the broken leg and head trauma. A consulting psychiatrist found him lucid, coherent, and fully oriented. He rationally explained his research. The doctor noted no signs of psychosis or suicidal intent. The fact that he climbed a safety barrier and fallen 40 feet was officially classified as an accident in the pursuit of research documentation. He was discharged 3 days later. I was on duty when his truck was found at the Cleetwood Cove trailhead, the only hiking access to the shoreline, at 11:22 p.m. The driver's door hung open. His crutches leaned neatly against the front bumper. His wallet and phone sat on the passenger seat. We found the tracks immediately. 1 set of boot prints, 1 set of drag marks from the injured leg. He had hiked 1.5 miles with a 700-foot elevation loss on a broken leg in the dark. The tracks ended at the water's edge. Search and recovery spent 4 days. They found nothing. Dr. Eris Thorne was listed as missing, presumed drowned. Mara added his name to her list. The sample of black water he collected never made it to any lab. According to the shipping company, it was delivered to his apartment. His landlord said Thorne had cleared out his apartment 3 days before his final return to Crater Lake. Everything was gone. Not a single notebook, not a hard drive, just a single note on the bare kitchen counter, in his handwriting. Now I understand. That was July. I thought naively that Thorne's death might serve as some kind of terrible conclusion, a peek in the pattern. August brought 12 separate incidents. Not disappearances. Not yet, but 12 reports of visitors found standing at the rim after dark, staring. 12 people escorted away with dilated pupils and serene, distant expressions. 12 names added to a new list I started, a watch list. We couldn't ban them from the park. They'd broken no laws. They'd simply looked at water. But I began to recognize the signs. The drift toward the rim at twilight. The excuses to linger past closing. The return visits, always positioning themselves at overlooks with a clear view of the deepest water. Mara assigned me to full-time evening patrol. My shift became 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., 7 days a week. I drove the rim road in an endless loop, a sentinel against the dark, checking each pull-out, each viewpoint. Most nights, I found someone to AD. Things accelerated on August 19th. I found a woman at Watchman Overlook who'd been standing perfectly still for 40 minutes. She was hypothermic, shaking violently, yet she refused to move. When I physically guided her to my truck, she kept trying to turn her head to keep the lake in sight. She told me she was an accountant from Spokane. She'd been having dreams about the lake for 3 weeks. Dreams of structures under the water, geometries and patterns that defied earthly architecture. "It's trying to show me something," she said through chattering teeth, her voice eerily steady. "It needs me to understand. That's why I have to keep looking." I took her to medical. She left the next morning. Her credit card was used at a gas station in Chiloquin that afternoon. Her car was found at the north entrance 2 days later. On August 23rd, a man at Rim Village had set up a telescope pointed at the lake. It was 11 p.m. He'd been there since sunset. He said, "Mapping the pattern." He showed me his notebook. Pages of abstract sketches, spirals, acute angles, non-repeating tessellations. "It's vast," he explained, eyes gleaming. "It goes down forever, but it's organized. There's a structure. If I can just see enough of it, I can understand its purpose." I confiscated his telescope. His name was David. I didn't add him to the watch list. His eyes were too far gone, the pupils swallowing the irises. 3 days later, a ranger found his car on a Forest Service road. Door open, shoes on the seat. Footprints led into the woods. They didn't lead back. By September, I stopped sleeping. I'd work my shift, drive home at 2 a.m., and lie awake until dawn. When I did sleep, I dreamed of still, dark water that showed nothing but depth. Mara noticed the shadows under my eyes. "You need to rotate off night duty. There's no one else who knows the signs." "Then we'll train someone." "There's no time. It's getting worse. You said so yourself." She was quiet for a long moment. We were in her office. Door closed. "Owen, you need to hear something. Something I should have told you years ago." She opened her desk drawer and laid her list on the desk. It had grown. This started, or at least our record of it started, in 1988. Before that, there were incidents, but they were rare, isolated. She pointed to the columns. From 1988 to 2000, 12 years, 11 names. 2000 to 2010, 10 years, 14 names. 2010 to 2020, 10 years, 22 names. This year alone, we've added 16. And it's only September. Why is it accelerating? I asked. The numbers chilling me more than any story. We don't know. Maybe we're just noticing it more. Maybe something has changed in the lake itself. Maybe the barrier, whatever keeps it contained, is weakening. She pulled out another document, pages brittle and yellowed. This is from 1959. A geologist named Henry Foss was doing seismic studies. He recorded what he called acoustic anomalies at extreme depth, regular vibrations, not geological, not volcanic, something with a pattern. His permit for further study was denied. His notes say the vibrations peaked during new moons and during periods of increased thermal activity in the magma chamber. She looked up at me. We're in one of those periods now. The seismic station is picking up matching vibrations, and the incidents are clustering around the new moon. You're saying there's a correlation between volcanic activity and people walking into the lake? I'm saying the pattern exists, she said, her voice hollow. Or I'm saying we're desperate to find one, because the alternative, that this is random, that anyone who looks at the water wrong is at risk, is too terrifying to accept. September 15th was a new moon. My shift was a nightmare. The rim was crowded with stargazers, hoping to see the Milky Way reflected in the water. I spent the entire evening hurrying people along, enforcing closures. At 9:47 p.m., I found 7 people at Rim Village. They stood in a line at the stone wall, evenly spaced, motionless, all staring at the black lake. I approached the first, a woman with a camera around her neck. "Ma'am, the park is closed." No response. I moved to the next, a man holding a map. "Sir, you need to return to your vehicle." Nothing. I tried all 7. None acknowledged me. They simply stood, breathing, staring. I radioed for backup. Mara arrived with 2 other rangers. We tried to intervene, touching shoulders, stepping into their sight lines. They would gently shift a step to the side, maintaining their view. At 10:15 p.m., the man with the map spoke, without turning. "It's rising." "What's rising?" I asked. "All of it. Everything that's down there. It's coming up." Against my better judgment, I followed his gaze. The lake's surface was different. It appeared to be bulging upward at the center, swelling as if from immense pressure below. I tore my eyes away. Everyone needs to leave now. This is an emergency evacuation. The 7 people didn't move. Mara grabbed my arm. "Don't look at it. Whatever it is, don't look. Check the shore markers." I looked at the rocky shoreline. The water level was exactly where it should be. The lake wasn't rising, but the perception of that swelling bulge was visceral, overwhelming. "We need to get them away from the rim," Mara said. "Now!" We tried everything. Gentle force, loud commands, threats. Nothing worked. They were statues. At 10:33 p.m., the first one moved, the woman with the camera. She climbed over the wall and started walking down the slope toward the shore. "Stop her," Mara shouted. I went over the wall after her. The slope was treacherous. She moved with uncanny surety. I caught up to her 50 feet from the water, grabbed her arm. She turned. Her eyes were solid black, no white, no iris. "Let me go," she said calmly. "I need to go. It's calling me." "Nothing is calling you. It knows my name. It's been saying my name since I arrived. It knows who I am, and it wants me to come down. And it's beautiful. I need to go. Please." She tried to pull away. I held on. Behind me, I heard shouting. The other 6 had begun to move. All of them were climbing over the wall. Mara's voice crackled on the radio. "All units to Rim Village. Emergency. We need everyone." The woman I held stopped struggling. She went still and looked past me at the water. "It's here," she whispered. "What's here?" "Everything. Everything that's been waiting. It's finally close enough to see clearly." Other rangers arrived. We formed a human chain, physically blocking the 7 from the water. It took all of us, wrestling against their quiet, persistent strength. At 11:04 p.m., they all stopped resisting at once. The woman with the black eyes smiled at me. "It's all right," she said. "It'll wait. It's patient. It's been waiting for thousands of years. It can wait a little longer." They returned to themselves gradually over the next hour. The blackness faded from their eyes. They became confused, disoriented. We took them to medical. All 7 were released the next morning. I never learned what happened to them after that. I was too afraid to check. The morning after the incident with the 7, Mara called an emergency meeting. Every range in the park, no administrators, just us. The room was thick with a shared, unspoken dread. "Last night was a threshold event," Mara began, her voice stripped of all inflection. 7 people simultaneously experiencing the same compulsion. That has never happened in our records. Whatever influence the lake exerts, it's getting stronger, or we're getting weaker, or both. She looked at each of us, her gaze lingering on the newer, younger faces. Our directive remains. We enforce the rules more strictly. We close the rim earlier. We limit after dark access. We watch the signs and we intervene earlier. She took a slow breath. And we accept that we cannot save everyone. Some people will look. Some will see. Some will walk into the water. Our job is not to prevent it completely. Our job is to minimize the damage. That's not good enough. I heard myself say. The The words hung in the silent room. Everyone turned to look at me. People are dying. They're walking into that lake and vanishing. And we're treating it like a containment problem instead of the emergency it is. We need to close the park. Fully alert the CDC, the Geological Survey. Get real scientists in here who can study this properly. Mara's expression didn't change. And tell them what, Owen? That the lake makes people walk into it? That there's something down there that calls to them? We have no evidence. No bodies. No proof of anything except human behavior that could be explained away as mental health crises or suicidal ideation. The Park Service will not shut down a national crown jewel based on that. They'll call a liability issue, send in a counselor for staff stress, and replace every one of us with rangers who don't know the rules. Rangers who will let more people die because they think we're superstitious or paranoid. She was right. I knew she was right. But sitting there, looking at the exhausted, frightened faces of people who carried the same impossible knowledge, it felt like surrender. How long? I asked, my voice breaking. How many more names go on your list before we admit we failed? Mara didn't answer. The meeting ended. We returned to our duties. That night, I went to the rim alone, not on patrol. I needed to see it again, to understand the pull. I stood at the wall at Discovery Point. The world was utterly silent. No wind, no insects, no distant owl. Even my own breath seemed muffled. Then I felt it. Not a sound, but vibration. A frequency so low it was felt in the bones and the teeth. It pulsed from the water, from the deep rock below. A slow, rhythmic beat, like a heart magnified. I stepped closer. The pulse intensified, resonating through me. And within that pulse, I perceived meaning. Not words, but intent. Look, see, understand. Come down. Join what we are building. Become part of the pattern. We have been building for millennia. We are almost complete. We need you to see it, to make it real. I was leaning over the wall, my weight shifting forward. One more inch and I'd fall. With a gasp, I jerked backward, stumbling and landing hard on the pavement. My heart hammered against my ribs. I had almost looked, really looked, and in that moment before I pulled away, I had felt it, the seductive, overwhelming desire to see what was down there, to understand, to be part of it. I drove home and sat in the dark until dawn. 3 days later, Silas didn't show up for work. His cabin was unlocked. Every mirror, bathroom, bedroom, hallway was covered with towels or sheets, taped in place. On his kitchen table sat a spiral notebook. The early entries were in his neat, precise hand. The final pages deteriorated into a frantic, overlapping scrawl. The first entry, dated just after the incident with the 7, made the mistake of glancing at the water's surface today. My own reflection looked back, except it wasn't me. The proportions were wrong. It was a version of me that was more detailed, more present. I looked away immediately, but I can still see it. A later entry, every reflective surface shows me the wrong version. The toaster, my phone screen, the window at night. My reflection's eyes are darker. Its expression is one I have never worn. Too knowing, I've covered all the mirrors. The final entry, from the morning he vanished, I understand now what they meant. The ones who walked in, they weren't being controlled. They finally saw. They saw what we are all part of. The vast structure beneath reality. The lake isn't a place. It's a lens, a way of seeing. Once you look through it properly, you understand the surface world is the illusion. What's beneath is permanent, real, waiting. I'm going back. Not because I have to, because I want to. Because now that I've seen, I can't unsee. And I don't want to. I found his truck at the Cleetwood Cove trailhead. At the shore, his ranger hat floated on the water, crown up, perfectly dry. I waded in. The cold was a physical shock. My hand stopped inches from the hat, frozen not by fear, but by a deeper instinctual prohibition. I looked down at the still water around my legs. In its reflection, I didn't see myself. I saw Silas. He was standing upright beneath the surface, looking up at me. His eyes were black. He was smiling, and behind him, arranged in rows that receded into the gloom, were others, dozens, standing, waiting, looking up. I stumbled backward, fell, scrambled ashore on hands and knees, and ran. I told Mara everything. She showed me a folder from her locked cabinet. Confidential sonar images, divers' reports from the 1990s, acoustic profiles, grainy photographs of shapes that might have been geological formations or might have been structures. In several, human-like forms were visible, standing in ordered patterns. The service has known, in a way it could never admit for decades, she said, her voice empty. They don't drown. They're incorporated. They choose it. It shows them something so compelling they leave everything behind. It's a trap, I said, or it's a different perspective on reality, she replied, the exhaustion finally breaking through. I'm taking over your night patrol. You need distance. Go home. Don't come back until you can look at a glass of water without seeing something else. I went home. At 3:17 a.m., my phone rang. Mara. Her voice was unervingly calm. I need you to know something. I'm at the Overlook. I realize we've been enforcing the wrong rule. Mara, where are you? The rule says don't look. But that's backwards. We should be looking. We should all be looking. It's beautiful, Owen. It's the answer to every question. How did I miss it for so long? Get away from the rim right now. You should come up. Come see it with me. Then you'll understand why I was so afraid. I was afraid of the wrong thing. Mara, listen to me. I'm already moving. I'm going down to the shore. The water is calling. It knows my name. And I'm so tired of being afraid. I'm tired of running. The line went dead. I drove there at impossible speed. Her patrol vehicle was at Discovery Point, door open, radio softly hissing. I saw her figure, halfway down the slope, descending with her familiar, limping gait. Mara, stop. She didn't. She reached the shore and walked into the water without hesitation. Knee-deep, waist-deep, chest-deep, the black surface closed over her head. I stood at the water's edge, screaming her name until the sky began to lighten. Nothing surfaced. Nothing changed. Mara Shaw was listed as missing, presumed drowned. Her name joined the list. I was promoted to her position. I've been doing this for 3 months now. We've had more incidents. More names on the list, which I now keep. I know how this ends. I can feel the cumulative weight of every night patrol, every intervention. It's patient. It learns what you care about, what you fear. Last week, I found myself at the rim at midnight with no memory of deciding to go there. I could perceive them below. All of them, standing in formations that extended down into impossible depths. Mara was there. Silas, Eris Thorne, Elise, Douglas Van, all looking up, waiting. I've submitted my resignation, effective in 1 week. I'll leave. I'll try to forget. But tonight, I have patrol. It's a new moon. The seismic monitors show increased thermal activity. I know someone will be at the rim, staring, about to see what they can't unsee. Maybe I'll reach them in time. Maybe I'll add their name to the watch list instead of the other one. Or maybe tonight the pattern completes itself, and I finally understand what they were all smiling about. I'm writing this because Mara was right. Someone must keep the record. If you're reading this, you are likely my replacement, sitting in this office, trying to understand what happened to your predecessor. Here is what you need to know. The lake is not merely a body of water. It is a threshold, a lens, a way of perceiving something that exists beneath the surface of our ordinary reality. Most people can look at it safely. They see only beauty and geology. But some of us are sensitive to the deeper pattern. And once you begin to perceive it, you cannot stop. It follows you in reflections, in dreams, in the stillness of a cup of water. It is patient. And eventually, everyone who sees it goes to join it. I do not know if they are dead or alive. I suspect those categories no longer apply. They are there. They are waiting. And they are not alone. Something vast and ancient is down there, accumulating, building structures from consciousness and geometry that have no translation in our language. Your job is to keep people from it. Enforce the rules. Watch the signs. The drift at dusk, the unblinking stare, the calm obsession. Intervene when you can. And no matter what you see in reflection, no matter whose voice seems to call your name from the depths, no matter how beautifully it promises you understanding, do not look at the water after dark. That is the only rule that matters. I hope you last longer than I did. If this account has unsettled you, made you look at a still body of water with a new sense of unease, then I have done my job. This is not just a story. It is a warning passed from one keeper's secrets to the next, and now, to you. The mission of Winds of Thought is to explore the liminal spaces of our world, the forgotten histories, the unexplained phenomena, the silent truths that exist just beyond the edge of consensus reality. We delve into the stories that official records omit, the patterns that defy easy explanation, and the mysteries that linger in the deep places of the earth and the human mind. This narrative was constructed from decades of documented eyewitness accounts, declassified Park Service memoranda, and a chilling consistency of folklore that spans generations. While the names and specific locations have been altered to protect the ongoing work of those who stand watch, the core pattern, the phenomenon of a place exerting an inexplicable, compelling influence on the human psyche, is supported by case studies from around the globe. Your engagement is what allows this channel to continue its work. By liking this video, you increase its visibility, helping this warning reach those who need to hear it. By subscribing to Winds of Thought, you join a community of curious minds, ensuring you're notified when we release our next deep dive into the world's most compelling mysteries. We have much more to explore. The consistent acoustic anomalies in deep lake systems, the global legends of hypnotic waters and spirit lures, the disturbing psychological profiles of those drawn to such places. Your support fuels this research. But more importantly, I urge you to take this story as a metaphor for the unseen patterns in your own life, where the deep, still waters you're drawn to stare into. What quiet pull are you ignoring? Be mindful what you choose to observe, for attention is not a passive act. It is a dialogue. And sometimes, the thing you're observing begins to observe you back. Leave a comment below. Tell us, if you were handed that laminated card, the one with the internal guidelines, what is the first thing you would do? Would you dismiss it? Would you investigate? Or would you simply follow the rule? Share this video with someone who appreciates a story that lingers, that makes a familiar world feel subtly stranger. Turn on notifications so you don't miss our next investigation. Remember, the world is deeper and stranger than it appears. Stay curious, but tread carefully. And whatever you do, when standing at the edge of your own unknown, mind what you look at after dark. Thank you for watching Winds of Thought.